This is how I got to $100,000 in salary within the first year of graduating out of school. So let me give you guys a background on my career, my university, and how I achieved $100,000. Actually, I quite literally doubled that within the next 2 or 3 years, but we can save that story for another video. So my background is in software engineering. Now, you might immediately be thinking, okay, well, this guy's a software engineer. He's gonna make six figures straight out of school. But I hate to break it to you, most junior engineers don't hit six figures until their second, third, even fourth year. The average salary for junior engineers in especially in Canada and Toronto specifically is around 70 to $80,000. If you're on the higher end of a junior, then you're looking at 90, close to like 95. And then you might be lucky to break past 100 within your first year. If you're in the States, it's a completely different story. States, I think money is just monopoly money at that point because they have so much money there, especially in California or Seattle or one of the big states like Texas. They have so much money, they don't know what to do with it, so they just give it away to everyone. So if you're in the States, this might not apply to you, but if you're in Canada, this may apply to you. So yeah, throughout university, I wasn't the most studious person. I had pretty average grades, especially in high school. I had below average grades. I didn't get into my dream university. I didn't get into my dream program. I ended up going to one of my backup options for university, University of Guelph. And I spent 4 years there. I really enjoyed it. Honestly, I'm glad I kind of went there because I feel like the experience and the skills that I've developed, I wouldn't have gotten had I gone to a more prestigious and more academic university. That's something that I'm really grateful for, and that is also something that had an impact on my salary because I have friends and I have family who've gone through the prestigious university, studied really hard, had super high grades, and they don't make half as much as me. So to reiterate, grades don't really matter. That's also another topic for another video, but here I want to talk about how I achieved 100K. So throughout school, grades weren't really a thing. I Some of the courses I barely passed. A lot of the courses I got around 70 to 80%, which is decent. It's not amazing, but it's decent. And I didn't get into co-op. My grades weren't high enough to get into co-op. So I had to look for my own internship when I applied for jobs. So every single summer I had to find my own jobs. Meanwhile, the co-op students, they had a portal where all the big tech companies, all the high paying jobs were literally spoon fed to them, and then they just had to do an interview on campus and move from there. Meanwhile, I had to find the handful of companies that allow internships outside of the school co-op program. And on top of that, most of the time the interviews were on site. So I had to go all the way to commute to Toronto. I was in Guelph at the time. This is a 2 hour commute, 3 hour commute to get these interviews going, meet them in person. So it was a constant back and forth battle with the handful of positions and then competing with other non-co-op students, and there are a lot more non-co-op students. You'd be surprised. Most people do not get into co-op. So you're competing with more people for less positions. First year summer, I didn't find anything, so I ended up working as technical support at a call center downtown Toronto. They were paying me minimum wage, 40 hours a week, and I was pretty happy about it. This was my first full time job. That equates to about not even 20,000. So this was first year university, 20 to $30,000 a year, but I only worked for 4 months. I didn't actually save that much money. But then I did save on taxes, so I guess like I had enough cash to get by for the next year or so. And then second year comes around, same story. Couldn't find an internship. I applied to thousands of positions. I reached out to companies directly, and there was this one weird response that I got from this astrologer, and he was trying to build a mobile application to make certain predictions of the day, whether you should go out today or not. There's a lot of people that believe in this stuff religiously. I personally don't, but again, if it's believe in it, to each their own. He wanted to build this app, and he was really excited, so he called me because I sent an application in, and he was like asking me questions, how to solve this, how to solve that. I answered it, and then he invited me for an interview. So the interview was in downtown Toronto in this massive building. So I was already like, whoa, this is cool. And then I go inside the building and I realize it's a residential building. I'm like, okay, that's a bit weird, but maybe they have an office in a residential building. Then I go up to the floor, open the door, and it's literally someone's house. It was someone's apartment, and I was weirded out at first. But at this point, I was so desperate to get like actual real world software engineering experience. I was like, screw it, I'm gonna give it a shot. Go into the room. He interviews me in his kitchen, which obviously smells like food. It was a very uncomfortable experience. But he told me that he has this grant from the government. It's minimum wage, and that they could pay me for 30 hours a week, and then on top of that, he can pay out of pocket. So A, I wanted the money, and B, I wanted the experience. So I was like, you know what, I'll do it. And then I start working there out of his kitchen. It was a really weird experience. The keyboard that he had was full of grease. The mouse that he had, like, it was barely functioning. I don't know. It was just a weird experience. Like I've never had. This is my first input into the software engineering world, and this is what I like saw. So I was like, what the hell? I hope this isn't like how the companies operate. Like companies like Google, obviously they don't. But again, this is my first experience with it. So then I ended up working for him for I think like 4 weeks, and he didn't get the grant from the government yet. They were just taking their sweet time with it, so I wasn't getting paid this whole time. And he kept saying, "Yeah, I'll pay you, I'll pay you, I'll pay you." For all I know, he could have just like, after 6, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, like fuck off, and I couldn't have done anything about it. But and there were 3 other students as well. All of them were freaking out. All of them were like, "Yo, man, this is sketchy. I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna quit." And I'm just like, "Yo, I'm just gonna get my work done, get the experience. Hopefully, I get paid." And then on the side, I was looking for a new job. Everything was going well, not well, but like everything was going. And then I think the 5th or 6th week, he actually got the government check, and I finally got paid. That was an interesting experience. So after I finally got paid, after about 1 or 2 weeks after that, I was still applying to jobs, and then this other company, who sells pet food online, they also got the same government grant. I was like, oh man, not this government grant again. But again, I needed the experience and the money, and this other company seemed to be at least a legitimate business. Although they were very small, they were a 20% startup, at least it wasn't out of someone's kitchen. Went through the interview, passed it. They needed to build a whole e-commerce site outside of Shopify because Shopify was charging them through the roof. And so I said I could do it. At this point, I had no experience in the technology and the tools, so they also hired a senior engineer, who would then direct me or manage me, so that because if he had to do all the work, it'd be much more expensive. So at least he can guide me towards the right direction, and I can build the software out and then charge a cheaper rate, which is minimum wage at the time, person to his $200 an hour rate. Yeah, so this actual real company. So even though they didn't get the grant right away, they were paying me out of pocket, and the grant would reimburse them. So I was getting paid. It was a good experience, and this was mostly work from home, so I wasn't working out of anyone's kitchen. So that was a bonus too. So overall, this experience was my first real software engineering gig, more of like a freelancer type gig, but at least I got quite a good bit of money out of it, and then also got some experience. So then third year comes around. The CEO of the previous startup that I worked at, the pet food store, I asked him, "Hey, do you have any connections or referrals that you can make for me? That would really help me. I would really appreciate it." And then he connected me to one of his other companies, which is a company that creates smart building software. So we're talking about turning on or off your lights using your phone. Software itself, like, again, it depends on the size of the building. Like a massive skyscraper, I guess it makes sense because somebody can programmatically save energy, programmatically change the thermostat. So it's pretty useful. For like the average person, it's not really that useful. And then they also had another business, the same business, just two different departments. They had another business in the health technology, and they took the exact same software and applied it to health tech. So the hardware that hospitals use can then connect to the software, which can then automate certain decisions. So it's a pretty interesting company, and this was like a 60 employee company. I got referred there, and this was my like first in office experience at an actual startup, and that was awesome. Like my mind was blown. I was like, okay, I could get used to this. So I worked there for the entirety of the summer, so all 4 months. Their pay was double minimum wage, so it was, obviously it was a massive jump already. And at that point, I think my yearly rate would have been something like $40,000 a year, 40 to 50,000. So this was third year university. I was making close to 40 to $50,000 a year. So six figures is still another double that. So yeah, I did that, and then graduated. Grades weren't the best. A lot of people were pursuing masters. A lot of people were going back to their co-op position. So I was actually a handful of people who graduated at the time. Programs are 5 years. I was not in co-op, so I graduated in the fourth year. So yeah, at that point, I had to start looking for a job, and this was around the time COVID pandemic started. That was a complete shit show. Everything went locked down. Companies started doing layoffs. The market was not good at that moment in time. And I graduated at that moment in time. So around the same time, I started working on a side project with a friend. We started a food delivery application that delivers based on volume in certain areas. So if you have a lot of orders, for example, university residences, a lot of people will be ordering around the same time in the same area. We then aggregate those orders into one single Uber driver, and he or she goes to the restaurants, multiple different restaurants, and then delivers all of them to one spot. And then we can get that savings back and give it back to the customers, give it back to the restaurants. Basically, just a aggregation model. And Uber wasn't doing this at the time. Now they do. Now, if you look at your Uber or skip the dish order, you'll see they're dropping multiple orders. But at the time, they weren't. So we launched it at our university. Everything was going good. We actually had 20 restaurants onboarded, and we had orders coming in. I think we delivered like 40 orders in like a month span. And then again, COVID came, campus shut down, the world shut down, and that also got stopped. So side project wasn't working, job market screwed. I'm graduating. I got to figure something out. And I was kind of panicking, not really. I was playing a lot of Call of Duty at the time, so that was where most of my time was being spent. So I was like, I'm not worried, but I was living with my parents too, so rent and stuff wasn't really a big deal. Money not coming in was a big deal. So yeah, then I just for a month I just sent out applications. Didn't really hear back, and then one company, they sell cars online within Canada. They reached out, and they were a startup of about 60 to 70 employee, and they were really impressed with the side project that I built, and they were impressed with all the technologies I used. Everything that they were struggling with was in alignment with the technologies I used. So I could have provided them with a lot of value straight off the bat. And then I went through the interview process completely. Like they have 3-step interview process. The first step is screening. The second is a technical coding challenge. The third is like a more in-depth system design challenge. And yeah, I aced the second step, and then they just skipped to the third one and just gave me the offer, which is quite interesting. I was like, huh, people do that? So then I got the offer. It was at the time it was 80,000, and I think it was like 10,000 stock options. That's it, and then like 3-week vacation, your standard vacation. And then I heard a lot from people that you should negotiate your salary. Of all the YouTubers I watched, they always say you should try to negotiate. Don't just accept right away. I tried that out. I said, hey, I have some other interviews lined up, and I'm trying to figure out what's the best option for me. 80,000 is great, but I'm getting interviews around the range of 85 to 90,000. So I'll let you know by Friday what my decision is. And then literally a couple hours after, I get a call. They're like, you know what? We'll bump your base salary to 85,000, and we'll give you, I think it was like 25,000 stock options. So they've pretty much just added like, I don't know, close to 10% to the offer. And I was like, okay. At that point, I was like, yo, listen, I just need the job. I'm not gonna try to negotiate more. I took it, and I was very close to that 6-figure mark. Very close, $15,000. Like my goal at the time was to get to that 6-figure mark. That was like, and in hindsight now, 2023, 6 figures is not a lot of money, but back then, this was like 2019, 2020. So that was 3 years ago. 6 figures back then was a lot. So within the last 3 years, salaries just shot through the roof, even though companies have been doing layoffs, which is very interesting. So then I ended up working for them for, I think like 3 or 4 months in, I was providing a lot of insight. I was really like questioning, hey, should we do this? We could try that, and then change, like providing alternative solutions and being in the limelight. Basically, you want to be constantly involved in conversations. I know you don't want to be one of those people who involves themselves in everything, but if you have some insight into something specific and you think that you can provide value there, you should speak up. That's what I was doing. I was speaking up. I wasn't in the shadows. I was more in the forefront, front lines, essentially within the team. Then at like 3 or 4 month mark in, the problem. So this is funny how I ended up getting a raise. So around the 3 or 4 month mark, they wanted engineers to start taking customer sales calls to get more insight to. I don't know the exact argument back then, but I think it was like they wanted the engineers to better understand how the customers interact with the sales team and then provide more value. Personally, I was fine with it, but I said during work hours, right? And then there was a huge argument between me and then my manager. It was like, he was like, "No, this would be on a Saturday or Sunday. During work hours, you're supposed to get your development work done." And then it started into a huge thing. It was like, "Listen, I get paid from 9 to 5, 5 days a week. I don't understand why I need to take extra work on a weekend. I don't care what you make me do from 9 to 5. In fact, like, okay, fine. It wasn't in the job description that I had to take phone calls, but I can get around it because I was in tech support. I have that experience. But asking me to do this on a Sunday when that Sunday is meant to be mine, completely unpaid, is beyond belief to me. And then at this point, I started applying to other jobs. I was pretty mad. I'm not gonna lie. I'm pretty sure I also like let that off. That I was pretty angry with them and I was disappointed in their decision. Literally, I shit you not, a month or not a month. I think it was a couple weeks after they turn around. They probably realized that I was about to quit, and they turn around and then they give me a raise. I think the raise was from 85 to 95. It was from 85 to 95. I think that was the raise. Yeah. And then when I got to 95, this was also around the time where we were scaling up and we were trying to hire more engineers. And we were trying to hire like good engineers at this point because the company recently raised funding. They wanted to basically hire better engineers to build the system faster and get more features out. And the problem was a lot of the engineers' expectations at the time, a lot higher than what we were expecting to pay within our pay ranges. And so they were either rejecting or they were asking for higher salaries, and it was becoming a problem. And it was interesting because I was on these interviews, so I obviously knew the numbers they were discussing. And I've been with the company for 6 or 7 months at this point. So it would have been a bit unfair for the new hires to be making more. And since I was so involved in the interviewing process and I knew exactly what was going on, I think their manager realized that we should probably bump their offers up too, because that's a little bit unfair. So that's what ended up happening. And that's what pushed me over to 105,000. So that's what got me 6 figures. And this was around 7 months out of graduation. And at that point, it was funny. I remember the manager saying, "Hey, Abir, welcome to the new tax bracket." And it was like a very surreal experience. I hit 6 figures. I made it my life goal up until then, and then I realized that it wasn't a big deal. You're in such a high tax bracket that that extra 10,000, 5,000, whatever it is, gets divided by 2 first of all, and then you divide it by 12, and then you divide it by another 2, and your change in your bi-weekly paychecks is literally negligible. So yeah, that is how I got to 6 figures within 6 months. It's quite a long, well, not within six. It was a work in progress over like the 4 or 5 years of university as well that I was in. But I guess people don't really count that because that's like a minimum standard for all graduates. You got to go through it for 4 years minimum. So it's what's the timeline after the 4 months to get to that 6 figure range is what people are more interested in. But yeah, ever since I've gotten to 6 figures, I'm now double it, and I still don't feel any different. I think after a certain point, money doesn't matter once you've met your basic necessities, gotten your house, gotten your car, and you're paying your bills, and you're traveling like 2 or 3 times a year. Like at that point, the amount of extra money you make it might make you feel more secure, but at the end of the day, you also get added responsibilities. The more amount of money you make, the more added responsibilities you have, and the more headaches you have. So the goal isn't to necessarily increase your salary per se. Your goal should be to increase your net worth. If you have $1 million in the bank account today, and your lifestyle is about like $40,000 to $50,000 a year, and you have like basically like 20 years of emergency safety net. That's great. But if you're earning $1 million a year and your lifestyle costs $1 million a year and you have $10,000 in your bank, let's say for argument's sake, you have $500,000 in your bank account. At that point, you only have 6 months of emergency funds, which is by all means great, but you will generally be more stressed. The lifestyle inflation creeps up with your salary. It happened to me. It happens to everyone. And you gotta be careful of that because no matter you're thinking from a perspective, I'm living with my parents, I have zero expenses, so that 6 figures sounds and looks like a lot. But when you have $5,000 to $6,000 in monthly expenses, that equates to about like 50 to 60,000, $70,000 a year. And the remaining 30 you pay in taxes, you have nothing left over. So really take that into perspective. Instead, chase your passion, chase your dreams, chase whatever makes you happy. Don't don't seek money. It's easy for me to say I'm already earning it, but trust me, you'll probably, and you know what, I'll let you learn the hard way. You'll figure it out when you get to that point. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I appreciate any feedback you have for me. Please drop it in the comments. Please drop a like and subscribe. And I'm sorry for being inconsistent. That's just the problem I go through. All I commit to something and then I do it for a few weeks and then I stop. Trying to get better at it. I can't make promises. I won't make promises. But again, I thank you and I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one if you've gotten this far.